There's a man who owes $900 million. He sleeps fine. Another woman carries $18,000 in credit card debt. She hasn't slept well in months. Same word, debt. Completely different realities. You were probably told to avoid debt like it's financial poison. Pay cash, save up, don't spend what you don't have. Meanwhile, the wealthiest people you can think of are signing loan documents with more zeros than your salary will ever see. And they're doing it on purpose. Here's what doesn't make sense at first. The advice you got wasn't wrong exactly. Consumer debt, the kind most people carry, actually is dangerous. Credit cards at 22% interest will absolutely ruin you. A car loan you can barely afford will keep you stuck for years. But there's another kind of debt, the kind that doesn't show up on personal finance blogs, the kind that builds empires instead of trapping people. And the gap between these two types of debt? That's not an accident. That's the entire game. Because once you understand why a billionaire will borrow $300 million to buy a building they could buy in cash, you start seeing the financial system completely differently. Not as a ladder everyone climbs the same way, but as two separate rule books, one for people who need money and one for people who use money. If you're finding this useful, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you think. Now, let's continue. Let's pull this apart. Start with the simplest version. You want to buy a house. It costs $500,000. You have $500,000 sitting in investments, earning an average of 8% a year. Normal advice says pay cash, no mortgage, no interest, own it outright. But here's what wealthy people actually do. They take the mortgage, put down 20%, borrow $400,000 at 4% interest, and leave their $500,000 invested, still earning 8%. Do the math. They're paying 4% to borrow money while their money earns 8%. That's a 4% spread for doing nothing except understanding how the system works. 4% on $400,000 is $16,000 a year, free, year after year. And that's the basic version. Now scale it. A real estate investor doesn't buy one house, they buy 20. They don't use their money, they use the bank's money. They put down 20% on each property, control $10 million in assets with $2 million of their own cash, and let tenants pay the mortgages. Each property appreciates, each mortgage gets paid down by someone else, and their original $2 million still working somewhere else, earning returns. This is called leverage, and it's not a trick, it's just how the wealthy operate by default. But it gets stranger when you look at how the ultra-wealthy use debt. Jeff Bezos has billions in Amazon stock. He doesn't sell it to buy things. Know why? Because selling triggers capital gains taxes. Depending on the amount, he could lose 20 to 40% immediately. So instead, he borrows against it. Banks will loan him money using his stock as collateral. The interest rate is tiny, usually under 2%, because the loan is basically risk-free for the bank. If he defaults, they just take the shares. He spends the borrowed money, buys whatever he wants, and he never pays capital gains. Ever. When the loan comes due, he doesn't pay it back with cash, he just refinances it, takes out a new loan to pay off the old one. The debt never actually gets paid, it just rolls forward, forever. And here's the truly absurd part. When he dies, his heirs inherit the stock at its current market value. The IRS resets the cost basis. All those decades of gains, legally erased. The capital gains tax bill disappears. This is called buy, borrow, die, and it's completely legal. The wealthiest families in America have been doing it for generations. Now, think about the debt you were warned about. Credit card debt, payday loans, car payments at 9% interest on a depreciating asset. That debt traps you because you're borrowing to consume, to buy things that lose value, to cover expenses when your income falls short. The interest stacks up. The balance grows. You're paying 22% to a bank while inflation eats 3% of your paycheck and your savings account earns 0.5%. You're on the wrong side of the trade. The system makes it incredibly easy to get that kind of debt. Pre-approved offers, buy now and pay later, 0% for 12 months, then 29% forever. It's engineered to feel harmless, until it isn't. Meanwhile, the debt that builds wealth, the kind that backed by assets that appreciate or generate income, that requires you to already have money. Banks don't offer asset-backed loans at 2% to people with no collateral. They don't finance investment properties for first-time buyers with no cash. Good debt requires wealth to access. Bad debt is available to everyone. See the design? There's another piece that makes this even more tilted. Inflation. When you borrow money today and pay it back over 30 years, you're paying it back with future dollars, and future dollars are worth less. Inflation is currently running around 3% a year, which means a mortgage you take out today gets easier to pay every year because your income, ideally, rises while your payments stays the same. Rich people understand this instinctively. They borrow as much as they can at the lowest rates possible, then let inflation erode the real cost of the debt, while their assets appreciate faster than the loan costs them. Your grandparents who bought a house in 1980 for $90,000 with a 10% mortgage, that payment felt brutal at the time. But by the year 2000, that same monthly payment was a joke compared to their income. Inflation did that. Now flip it. If you're saving cash and not investing it, inflation is actively stealing from you. Your $100,000 in a savings account loses $3,000 of purchasing power every year. You're going backwards while feeling like you're being responsible. The system punishes people who save in cash and rewards people who borrow intelligently and invest. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Leverage is an amplifier. It makes wins bigger and losses catastrophic. When housing prices dropped in 2008, people who were over-leveraged lost everything. Investment properties went underwater. Mortgages exceeded home values. Banks foreclosed. Fortunes evaporated. Debt only works when asset prices keep going up, when growth continues, when interest rates stay low. The moment that reverses, leverage turns into a trapdoor. And the wealthy know this. That's why they diversify, why they have liquidity, why they structure deals so they can survive downturns without being forced to sell at the bottom. Normal people don't have that cushion. One bad year, one medical emergency, one job loss, and the debt that was supposed to build wealth becomes the thing that destroys it. So the truth is more complicated than debt is good or debt is bad. It's that debt is a tool, and like any tool, it works completely differently depending on who's holding it and what they're building. This isn't a conspiracy. Nobody's hiding this information. It's taught in business schools. It's printed in finance textbooks. It's how corporations have operated for 100 years. But it's not taught in high school. It's not in the advice your parents gave you. And it's definitely not in the financial literacy seminars that tell you to cut up your credit cards and avoid debt at all costs. Because that advice, while true for consumer debt, completely ignores the other half of the equation, the half where debt becomes a wealth-building machine instead of a trap. And the result is a system where one group of people borrows money to get richer, while another group is terrified of it entirely. So here's the question you're left with. If the rules are this different depending on which side you're on, what does it actually take to switch sides? Is it just knowledge? Is it access? Is it starting capital? Or is the gap wider than that? The people who love debt aren't smarter than you. They're just playing a different game. The question is whether that game has room for anyone else, or if it was never designed to.